Hello and welcome to Sensitive Changemakers, the podcast where we celebrate the power of sensitivity and introversion in leadership, entrepreneurship, and beyond. I'm Kate Carter, your host, a certified professional coach, HSP, and introvert who's passionate about helping you embrace your unique gifts and lead with authenticity. I am incredibly honored today to have a very special guest, and I'm going to introduce her and then we're going to talk about so many different things about being highly sensitive. So I am very honored to welcome Diana to the podcast today. She is a money coach at All the Colours and wealth manager at Strategy Squad. Diana provides clients with the education they need to make financial decisions, accountability to take action, and coaching to understand why they do what they do with money. As an individual and a group coach, Deanna specializes in helping women of color entrepreneurs create sustainable money systems for themselves, their loved ones, and their communities. Through Strategy Squad, Deanna supports impact investors in aligning their values and investments. Deanna, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you would like to add to that bio?
Thank you, Kate, for the opportunity to be here. I think the thing I would add, knowing where your audience is geographically, is that I focus on the US. That's the system that I know the best. That's where I am able to do investment management. However, money coaching is international. Um, for anybody who's living either a Western culture or not, I'm more than happy to have conversations around coaching and family and managing money.
It's a really holistic perspective, isn't it? The way that you work is so holistic.
Yes, yes. And I think it's because I do when I'm working with someone as a money coach, I am really centering coaching of like what brings the person to me? What is it that they need support with? How can I and I'm a mirror, right? So I'm reflecting back to them what I hear and also just creating a container for it. And it's just like with any coaching experience, except that I focus on money. And because of my technical background, I'm a certified financial planner. I also have like years of experience working with money and investments. I can give insight on that. However, a lot of the time when people reach out for money coaching specifically through all the colors, the technical information is pretty basic, right? So then it's really for the coaching that they come.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful space, and I don't know about the listeners, but I could listen to Deanna for like hours on end. And she does have her own podcast as well, which we will link to. So if you do love her voice, because it is so unbelievably relaxing, you can just go and gorge on all of her podcast episodes.
That's so funny. That's so funny. It reminds me when I was in my first job out of college, I like picked up the phone, I was answering, I was a secretary, and my boss was like, "You could be a telemarketer. Your voice is so soothing." I was like, "Okay." Now I'm a podcast host.
It is absolutely it's so soothing, and it just you must have this I would imagine you would have this impact on the people that you work with and the people that are around you because it just I think people pick up on that energy and everybody just, well, it feels like when I'm with you anyway, even though it's virtually, it just feels like the energy just goes, ah, and we can slow down and we can take our time.
Thank you. That's a high compliment coming from a sensitive coach.
Do you have that from your clients? Do they ever comment on anything like that about how you are with them?
They don't, but that is a comment I get very frequently from my podcast that people say you have such a soothing voice. Your podcast is like so soothing to listen to, even though I'm talking about money, which happens to be like one of the leading causes of mental health stress in the world. And here I am being like relaxing as we do it. But I'm thinking about yeah, no, I have been told my energy is very grounded and I feel very like mother tree.
I love that image. And I would love to know how do you get to where you are? Like what's the journey you came on to get to here?
Yeah, definitely. I think I mean I'll start with how I got to my work because I do consider my work my calling, my vocation. I'm Quaker, so Quakers even call it my ministry. I first worked with money when I was in college. I was working at a large broker dealer in 2007 when there was the big financial crisis in the US. There was a big housing crisis, mortgages, like it was really, really stressful. And in some ways, we're kind of going through that uncertainty right now in the US, especially with the stock market or with all of the political changes. And I remember thinking, like, gross, I never want to work here. Like, this is not for me. Because in some ways, the place where I was not a good fit. It was very focused on like making sales and growing money. It was very like shallows focused, like status, money, like approval, like those kind of things. I just was like, this doesn't feel meaningful. And I also felt completely out of place with like looking for people who had millions of dollars to invest. I was just like, that's not my lifestyle. I don't know anyone like that. However, life brought me back to that exact same work, but in a very, very different iteration. Whereas before it really was incredibly sales focused, now it's service oriented, really service oriented, and really focused on how we are interconnected. So, community well being, social justice, the clients that come to me, both on the investment, the coaching, the group workshops, all of them share that desire of collective well-being, and I went through a couple of different iterations. I worked as a social worker for a bit, and I didn't really know how to take care of myself empathically. So my boundaries weren't that
Mm.
strong. I used to work with people who were going through houselessness, and I just wanted to take them home with me. And my boyfriend was like, no way, we can't have all these people live with us. It's like, there's so many problems with it. But I really was like, if we could just like, we lived in a studio apartment, right? I burnt out. I left that job. And then I worked exclusively with numbers. I went to the other extreme and I really missed people because although I'm highly sensitive, I'm still an extrovert and I wanted meaning in my work. So I left that job. And I found like a very neutral place to work in. I liked it. I did data analysis. I do like number crunching. There's something that's very like steadying for me about seeing like rows and rows of numbers and knowing that they all add up. Like the numbers always do what you think they're going to do. People are incredibly chaotic, but one plus one is two,
Yeah.
and like that feels good. I like having that as part of my work. But there wasn't any meaning in what I was doing. I was a business analyst. So I was doing a lot of volunteering outside of that work. And eventually I met a woman who does what I do now. She's a certified financial planner. And even though I left finance, I kept learning about personal finance. My family is very money motivated. They immigrated from Mexico to the US for a better economic situation. And like money was like a big conversation topic. I know for most people, like people don't like their families don't talk about money. My family, that was like the topic where we felt the most comfortable. Like honestly, it was random. So because of that personal interest and my upbringing, when she told me what she did, it sounded like the numbers were there, the people were there, the meaning, but I still had a lot of hesitation. At this point, I had been out of college for 4 years and I had worked at three different places. And I was like, I just don't want to start at the bottom again.
Mhm.
So I did a lot of research. I did a lot of research for a year. I told myself, I'm going to have an informational interview with someone in this field, or I'm going to go to a networking event in this field to really find out if this is the place for me. And now looking back, I know that I needed that just to feel more settled before making another change because I was losing faith in myself. Like now I understand as a highly sensitive that my work needs to have meaning. But back then I was gaslighting myself. I was like, just volunteer on the side. Who cares if your work doesn't have meaning?
That makes so much sense.
So I made the career change 6 years ago and I'm so happy with the work that I do.
It's such a beautiful story, and there's so many things I was smiling to myself as I was listening because there were so many snippets of beautiful evidence of being highly sensitive, but not realizing that at the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I found out I was highly sensitive 5 years ago, is when someone first brought it up to me. And I was not happy about the term. It sounded sensitive and weak and feminine, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it, but it kept coming up in conversation. And now I embrace it so much that my podcast is called Highly Sensitive Money. Like I really have come full circle into the term, just like I came full circle into finance.
It's such a beautiful journey. And One of the questions that I had for you as you were talking there was how has being highly sensitive impacted how you feel in your business now, but also as you're looking back on the journey that you've had? Does that make sense?
It's very much a journey. Looking back now, I can see how harsh I was with myself, trying to fit a mold, trying to just disconnect my values and who I am and how draining it was. So I think I was showing up at like 70%, 60%. And I just thought that that was it. That's all I could do. And in other areas of my life, I could show up as 100%. But 8 hours of my waking time, 9 hours if you include lunch, I was dimming myself. So looking back, I see that. And how it is today, I mean, today it's just, I often will have meetings with clients and feel so honored and grateful that they let me into this delicate part of their life. And sometimes I'm surprised at how much I know. That can be really sweet too when I'm like, oh, they mentioned something and I have like all of this other random technical information, all of these connections that I have from the 6 years of experience. And it feels exciting. It feels like, where will I be in 10 years? Like it feels like I've really career-wise have found my forever home.
And I love the fact that you mention research there and depth and meaning. And I think those things are such an important part of being highly sensitive, and they can so often get overlooked because we think they're wrong. Or like you were saying, like, just forget it. Just do those things on the side, but just focus on, I don't know, getting the stability or getting the job or getting the money that you need each month. And I think it's such a wonderful thing that you've managed to find your place by combining that because, we do need money to live. It'd be lovely if we could live for free, but we can't. So we do need that. But also just having that wonderful understanding of I get to bring in the depth, I get to bring in the research or the experience that you've had, like you were saying, all those little details that you can bring in because probably because you've got that experience, but also probably because you're highly sensitive and you just
Yeah.
absorbing those kind of facts and details. Does that feel true?
It does. I think there are many amazing money coaches and financial planners who are not highly sensitive, but the gift of being highly sensitive just comes out wherever you are, right? And the gift for me is really tuning into my client's energy, being able to create that safe container for them. One of the things that I don't know if this is all highly sensitive, but one of the specific things for me is that like I don't think about my clients when I'm not with them, when I'm not like face to face with them, or when I'm not preparing something for them or doing something for them. But when I see them, it's like I all of this information that I have on them just kind of it comes up. It's like this folder opens and tons of things that I didn't know that I knew about them. And they're like, "Oh, you remember that?" And I'm like, "I guess I do because I don't remember remembering it." That does feel pretty special. And because money is such a source of stress, and I am not afraid of discomfort, it's fine. Like I don't need to rush through it.
I'm just kind of thinking on that because I think it applies to money, but for me anyway, as you're talking through that, I'm like, oh, that really resonates with me when I was first starting coaching, actually leaning into having not uncomfortable conversations, but leaning into something I could see and reflecting back to that, knowing that it was going to be an edge, that it was going to be something that maybe we needed to explore, and actually to start off with pulling back from that, thinking, oh, I can't do that. That's actually the
Mm.
gift is, isn't it? Is that's what I can see. Let's lean into that and let's discuss it and let's explore it. That's what came up for me when you were talking about that.
And I really learned how to get comfortable with discomfort. I did another training called compassionate inquiry. So Gabor Mate is a medical doctor in Canada, and he developed a methodology of somatic awareness to work with people going through addiction. And I went through that program because I wanted to be a meditation teacher. I had nothing to do with my work. But then it changed the way that I coach. Like in 3 months, it was a 9 month program. It was a whole year. It was a 1 year program. After 3 months, I could tell the difference.
Mm.
I was feeling less skittish around my clients' discomfort because before, I mean, I could see it and I would avoid it. Because who wants to feel uncomfortable, right? Like, I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I'd be like, oh, it's coming. Let's
Yes,
like,
absolutely. Yeah.
and the compassionate inquiry training was like, actually, no, there's something useful in there. And there's a lot of freedom that comes from not avoiding.
Isn't it weird? I did trauma-informed coaching and it was a lot about somatic practices. And that's where my realization came from when I was doing, because obviously I'd done my coaching qualification and then doing that after. And I was like, oh, this is something I need to lean into. I need to slow down. I need to explore this, to kind of open this up, because actually the gifts and the what I like to call the nuggets of gold are in those conversations. That's where that growth happens. So yeah, I love the fact that we've kind of come at it from different angles, but there's a commonality there as well.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of being empathic, right? That like we can see people's discomfort and wanting to protect people from it. And now I'm like, nope, no need to do that. Sometimes life does give you hard edges and they're meant to be navigated, not fled from.
And I would love to know, do most of your clients resonate with being highly sensitive, or is it much more of the way that you approach money?
I think some of my clients, I don't know that most of them are. I haven't done like the numbers of it. For my coaching practice, I think more of them are highly sensitive because one of the aspects, at least the way that I work through the world, is verbal processing. And I know that when I have to do some like heavy verbal processing, I'll often go to my HSP friends because like we can do it together. And I think some of my clients are attracted to me because I'm like, yes, let's talk about it 100 ways before you decide. And it might have been the first way, but like I know I understand the desire, the need to really look at all of the alternatives. So yes, for my coaching clients, for my investment management clients, not so much yet. My investment work has been pretty new. So I've been working under somebody else who is not highly sensitive. I thoroughly enjoy working with Nicole. She's the founder of the firm, and I'm in the process of getting my own clients. I have a couple right now who are highly sensitive. So I imagine that just like with my coaching practice, I'll likely attract a lot of highly sensitive clients who need investment support. That hasn't happened yet. And with workshops, actually, it was through workshops that I decided to start focusing more on highly sensitives. I gave a presentation on money archetypes. So you can find this on my website. It's a quiz. Like, what tree is your money? What is your archetype when it comes to money? And I use trees because trees are very neutral. And it's very understandable that like different environments produce different types of trees. And I was giving this workshop at a place for somatic practitioners, and everyone present was a woman. All of them were women of color. The majority were Black. And the response I was getting about it being so incredibly helpful and that they felt like no judgment coming from me, like these really positive, like there was someone who was like close to tears because the subject was so scary, but here I was making it gentle and fun and even like soothing. I talk about money work needs to be somewhere between going to the dentist for like a dental cleanup and getting a massage, right? Like a soothing massage. It needs to feel like self-care. And also like here I am, adulting, being an adult, being responsible, caring for myself, making sure that, that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. It was at that workshop where the seed was planted that I provide the most value to highly sensitives because I've given workshops at other places that they're like, yeah, okay, that's cute.
Yeah.
How do I make more money? Like they just kind of skip over it, which I can also do. I can also be on that wavelength. And that one doesn't feel as meaningful as the one where like I'm helping people shift limiting beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that meaning, isn't it? And I think once you realize that about yourself, or you realize that that is something that you hold dear, everything, I was going to say feels easier, and that easy is the wrong word. Everything can fit into place in the fact that you start to see things differently. So you start to see it through a lens of, this is important to me and it's okay that this is important to me, or I would like to do that. And it's, again, that normalization, like it's okay that I want to do this kind of work, because suddenly you realize that that is a huge important part of who you are. And so you stop pushing it away, you start to embrace it a little bit more.
Definitely. It just feels like things flow together more.
Yes, flow, that's a good word. There was a couple of things that came up for me there, because I know you talk a lot about social justice. And how does that kind of fit in? Because there's so many things that you do, and I know it's part of that holistic, almost framework that you have. How does social justice fit into that?
Well, I'll talk about how it fits into me.
Mm.
Um, my earliest money memory, and this is an exercise that I would recommend a lot of people take. Like listeners, if you just want to just set aside 10 minutes and write down like what was your earliest money memory, your earliest money experience as a kid, and what is that? How do you think it may continue to replicate itself now? Or when did it start to shift if there were limiting things about it? And I'll share mine as an example. So, one of my earliest money memories, like I mentioned earlier, my parents immigrated from Mexico to the US, and I would often go back to Mexico, to Sonora, to visit my family, my younger cousins. I have one older cousin, but like all of my cousins, and my parents would give us spending money. And my cousin's parents did not have enough to give spending money. And I remember we went to the little corner store, and there were five of us. There were four of us, I think, at that time. My youngest cousin wasn't born yet. And we all like got what we were gonna get. We went up to the counter, and my older cousin looks at me and he's like, "You pay." And I thought, "What? I pay? Like I don't want to pay. This is my money." Like, just like I think that was very much the response of like, why? But I think I did it. I don't remember paying. I just remember the shock and confusion at having to pay. And years later, I would still kind of do that. Like with this cousin, I would want to spend my money before I saw him because I didn't want to like pay for him for things. But it felt uncomfortable. It felt like, why do I have money when he doesn't? I'm 8 years old. He's nine. Like we're both obviously not going out there earning a job. Like I'm really grateful that that wasn't part of our experience. I know for some people, like, yes, at 8 years old, you have your own spending money because you work a job. There's the parts of the world where that's true, but that thankfully that wasn't true for either of us. And it felt painful to know that I had access to more than my family. And there were a lot of things that were part of it. There's a history of addiction in my family that his father was struggling with. My parents struggle with workaholism. And even then, it's a painful money memory, that inequality. And also growing up literally on the border, often we would visit my family in Mexico, my grandmother, my aunts and uncles, and then we would drive back into the US. There's a line that you wait in the car, and there were always children who would walk by selling candy and mothers carrying babies. Like the income inequality was so present. And I am grateful for that because it's such a big part of where I grew up, where I came from. My dad experienced food insecurity. I didn't, but it's still present. And I don't think it's necessary. We live in a world where hunger doesn't really need to be part of the world. We could shift focuses, we could shift resources, and then there wouldn't be hunger. And I work best with clients where they see that too, where they see the interconnectedness. And again, that's a gift of, or a burden. At the beginning, I felt like a burden of being highly sensitive, that seeing others in pain meant that I felt pain, right? Like it can't be I win, you lose. That's immediately lose lose for me.
Mhm.
How does that shift the work I do now and the way that I move now? Every time we make a money decision, we can decide what we're supporting, right? Like where do you shop? How often do you replace things? What do you do things with things that you're replacing? Do you give them to someone? Do you throw them in the bin? Like even just like your relationship with fast fashion, which as a young adult, I had to be like, okay, this fast fashion is one of the leading sources of pollution. I need to stop. I need to actually spend more money on quality things and have less of them. And that was really painful, but it felt less painful than knowing I was contributing to the problem. And when I'm working on investments, I do focus on regenerative investments, things that are building solutions, creating a just transition to a different kind of economy. When I'm working on money coaching, I hold the space for clients to be with that confusion. Most of us have to, at some level, decide, like, I don't know if it's compromise with our value. And maybe it is. We have to compromise our values. Like, we can't buy everything free trade because it's actually not even possible. There's so many things that aren't available free trade, right? Like I try to shop local, but that means that there's like three fruits that are
Mhm.
local to me. And sometimes I buy something from Peru. Like I just, but I mostly eat the things that are local to me. It's just, and helping clients feel comfortable with that decision for themselves or not. The beauty about coaching is that I don't bring that stuff in. I attract people who already have it, and then I just follow wherever they are.
And again, just kind of as you're talking, I'm like, oh, how does that kind of fit into what I've experienced and things like I'm not sure whether I've shared this on the podcast actually. My dad grew vegetables. Like that's what he did when we were growing up. Had his own business. He's still doing it. He turns 80 this year. He still won't give it up. But yeah, so we would have our meals was based on the food that he brought home. it was always like leeks, broccoli, things that we could grow over in this country, or plums for fruit, apples, things like that that he would bring home every day. And that was the kind of meals that we ate. And as a result, I'm really particular now. So I have my own trees in my back garden. I've got an apple, a plum, and a pear. I've got raspberries. I've got some strawberries. Hopefully they'll grow this year. I'm not very lucky with strawberries. And we every so often I'll do things like potatoes, lettuce, and things like that. So it's kind of ingrained in me to do those sort of things. And I think it's just really interesting to hear your perspective from like basically the other side of the world. Like you were talking about that interconnectedness, that humanness of actually there is a part in all of us that is connected and in different ways. And I just love that that's there and that's available. So I just wanted to kind of share that it was
Yeah.
lovely that we're far apart, but actually there's a thread.
And it's so funny that I'm kind of like, oh, guavas again. They're so boring. I eat them all.
I would love a guava, please. I'll swap you some broccoli. Yeah.
Yeah, that interconnectedness. So how do I bring social justice into clients? Again, with coaching, you're always leading the client. With investments, the things that we offer are so social justice oriented. If people like go over to Strategy Squad, they can take a look at what we do.
Mm. Oh, I love that. And I will definitely make sure the link goes in that. And also what you mentioned earlier about the quiz. I think I'm going to go and try it because I always love a good quiz. And I love trees as well. It's so interesting you said trees. I just love trees. I think they're such a good representation of life generally. Nature, I know we've spoken about before. We just generally, as highly sensitives, love some nature. Such a gentle, soothing introduction into money because it can be really triggering. It can be really
Mhm.
emotionally fraught. How do you, I think I'm going to know the answer to this question because you've kind of already alluded to it, but how do you guide people through the process who do have money triggers or maybe trauma related to money?
Really slowly.
I thought that
We
might be
just
good.
go really slowly. I start with like, what is it that you're trying to work? What is it that you're trying to create? What is the goal that you have? And we go from there of like, what have you already tried? What have you already tried? What would it feel good to try next? What is the smallest step that you can take that feels an integrity with where you are and who you are? And I also know the depths of what I can do. We also have an association called the Financial Therapy Association that when there is really kind of incapacitating trauma or there's a space where you actually need more support than what I can provide as a coach, I have referred people, especially if I'm working with a couple who doesn't have the same goal in mind. Then I'm like, oh, marriage counseling is beyond my scope. But again, when I'm working with clients, sometimes we'll do the compassionate inquiry training of asking them, where do you feel it in your body? How old is that part? What does it need? What is it trying to say? What does it believe? Right. And often that holding will be enough for people to get more clarity on what their next step is. And I do tend to work with a lot of people who are already seeing a therapist. So they'll tell me, like, oh, I'm going to take this conversation somewhere else. Because again, I just want to be clear of what the boundaries are because money is so stressful. I'm very much focused on like, where are you right now? Where do you want to go? If there was a really painful event that happened in your family around money and it's impacting your relationship with like a family member, and then you're seeing that that same relationship with a family member is being replicated at work, like those interpersonal behavior changes actually like don't belong with me. I can't do as much with those. And I think, again, another gift of being highly sensitive is that I can see like where am I going to be supportive and where do I need to guide them somewhere else with like a different container? Because money coaching tends to be at the minimum, it's 3 sessions because we're doing foundation building. And at the high end, it's up to 12.
Mm.
Because again, I don't want it to get tripped into life coaching or therapy.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And actually that was one of my next questions was how do you actually work with people in what kind of containers? How do you work with somebody to distinguish how long they need? Is it just, do you kind of have an initial conversation and then kind of say it might be worth us doing 10 sessions, 12 sessions? How do you kind of come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I let people know that it's always 3 because we're foundation building at the minimum. And then if there's a lot of behavioral changes that need to be done, for example, if they have a tendency to overspend then we'll move into 6 sessions, 8 sessions, because they need longer terms of support. And for someone who just has been afraid of looking at the thing and wants to look at it now, often 3 sessions is enough, right? It's enough for them to kind of feel, okay, this is what I need to do. And then from there, they can keep going. On the investment management side, those can be really lifelong relationships. Where I worked at before, I had one of my coworkers had been working with his clients for 40 years.
I must admit, if I had an investment guru, should I say, or somebody who I really trusted, I don't think I'd ever swap. So,
Yeah. It's a very sticky relationship. Once you're comfortable, you're like, and I like what you're doing. I need you to keep doing it. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And when you work with somebody on the coaching side of things, what do people come to you asking for? Is it just a wide range of different things? Do you see kind of trends? Do you see patterns?
I focus a lot on cash flow
Okay.
because cash flow is one of the big pain points for people of like, a lot of the times, especially people come to me when they're like, I'm making twice as much as I used to be making 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and somehow I still have the same level of debt and no savings.
Yeah.
When they've already kind of like, okay, earning more money isn't going to solve the problem. When earning more money is going to solve the problem, though, then if I'm working with an entrepreneur, we're focusing on like, how do we get your pricing right?
Mm.
How do we get you where you're more comfortable getting new clients? What is the process for clients to sign up with you? How many clients do you need for your lifestyle? Those kind of questions. Also, I do a lot of interpretation or explaining because a lot of my clients come and the words around money like investments, retirement, insurance can flood people emotionally where they're overwhelmed. So then as I'm learning about them, I'll end up translating it, the gift of metaphor, right? Like I'll use a million metaphors to explain things to them. And I can tell, I was explaining to someone interest and principal on a credit card, how the principal is the amount you borrowed and the interest is what keeps growing and how all of that work. And I often will use pencils to be like, this is the interest, this is the principal, these are your payments. If you make this much more, it's going towards this part, not, and I'm using my hands right now to explain it, but because I can tell when people have like glazed off. And I'll ask people like, are you still with me? Or like repeat back to me what I said. Like, what did you understand from what I said? It can be a lot of translation. I also do love working with couples because I'm like a third neutral party that can hold them during often difficult conversations. And when one person is telling me their story, the other person is not like they don't have the talking stick, right? They can't interrupt. So they're often hearing the story for like really actually hearing it because they don't have to respond. They know that I'm going to respond, right? So that's a fun place to be in when the couples have like a really clear joint vision, but they're not so sure on the how.
Yes. It's such an important conversation to have. I was just sort of thinking there, it's like I should have known you 5, 6 years ago. This has been really supportive. I think it's speaking as a highly sensitive, coming into a money orientated kind of environment, which online space entrepreneurship is. I think I've shared this before. My initial coaching session, my first paid one, the conversation I had was, how much do you want to pay me? Like that was how it started.
I know that I have a couple of clients in the UK and they're employees, they're not entrepreneurs because I know that what they're paying into is very different than what we pay into in the US. So I would recommend like technical background as you're learning about all of those things. Again, it can be helpful to hire a coach so that when we get emotionally flooded, because I get emotionally flooded too, I still have the person there who can slow down with me and keep me engaged so that I understand so that my cognitive cortex, my decision making is back online and then I can make a decision that I won't double guess afterwards.
Yes. And that's such an important part that you've just raised there about that kind of more limbic brain as opposed to that prefrontal cortex. It's so important. I think if more people understood that's how our brain worked, I think we would have different conversations and we would make decisions differently. But I think a lot of us don't realize that a lot of the time we're making decisions from that more emotional part of us, and we're not bringing on that more kind of decision making prefrontal cortex kind of thinking part into the equation. So I love that you've mentioned that, and that obviously is a
Mm.
part of what you do.
Yeah, and it's the limbic part of us. It's like it's survive and defend, right? It's attack and defend. Like it's a part of us. I don't even know that it's emotional as much as it's like tunnel visioned. right? It doesn't have like a wide breadth of emotions. It just has fear and attack. Like fear and anger are the things that it does. When my clients show up with that, it's just opening, right? It's like, okay, lizard brain is here and lizard brain has a lot of things to say. How do we open it up? How do we like find out what lizard brain needs? Because sometimes I know I've experienced it so many times myself when I'm really highly like flooded or really upset. There's a wise part of me that has hit all of the alarms for some reason. And that wise part of me may be reacting to something that happened 10 years ago that I haven't looked at, that I haven't fully integrated,
Yeah.
right? Like that thread from 10 years ago is no longer here. And when I don't slow down to find out what I'm reacting to, if it's present or something in the past, um, I'll end up repeating
Yes.
the solutions that I already have, whether they work or not. You know, it's like I have a hammer and everything looks like a nail. So those are the places where I'm like, okay, yes, let's talk about like what has happened with money in the past. Why are you thinking that it might happen again? Like that would be like a small trauma that I do help clients, I do support clients with. And a lot of the times the terms that I'll use, I won't use like limbic brain. I won't use those terms as much as I'll be like, what part of you is reacting right now? How old do you think that part of you is? Like, because the younger that we are when we're making a decision, often the less creative we can be because we're just fear and anger are the only things we're seeing. And it's hard to be creative and hold imagination when you feel like you're going to be attacked.
Yeah. Because you just want safety.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Right.
That is so, so true. And you really can't think outside the box. I'm thinking of myself, and I'm sure that the listeners can think of situations and events where you can't think clearly. You can't think of a solution. You can't think outside the box because your brain is just it's attached itself to one thing, and even if you don't have the awareness to understand why like you said, it's that tunnel vision of no, this I can only think about this one thing, or this thing is really bothering me, and you can't kind of widen your view to see other things. I can think of lots of different reasons, and they are for me there are a lot of, and I know we discussed this in the podcast because I was on Deanna's podcast, so you can go and listen to that. We'll link into that, I'm sure. But there are quite a few money things, and I can see how I repeated the same actions over and over again. A very defensive mechanism around money, especially when it was something I didn't feel comfortable with, then tears, then just shut down. And so I can see how, again, what Deanna was saying is so true that it doesn't matter if it was a helpful or an unhelpful habit or a reaction, your brain doesn't care. It will just, it's a known pattern. Like when you do this, this is how you react. And that's the shortcut that we're going to go to unless it gets interrupted or shifted or kind of explored, slowed down, like you were saying, that kind of slow down process. So, yeah, I love that you bring that into it. I think that can be, I can imagine being a client of yours, that would be a game changer.
Yeah. Thank you. It is really helpful for them. And I know I've experienced it so many times in my own life where I'm like, oh, I've done this a million times and a million times it has not worked, but I really want to do it again. Like,
And this is some of the difficult conversations that I have to have sometimes. And it's really interesting actually how we explore it, but that idea that your body brain, however you like to look at it, is getting something out of that reaction. There is something that is benefiting you, and that can be really difficult to see and to accept and go, oh yeah. And sometimes it feels safe to react like that because that's how you've always reacted.
and another thing that is really helpful with coaching is that I see how clients get kind of stuck in a loop.
Mm,
They have a decision to make, but there are these variables that they're not sure about. They have that decision to make and they think about the same variables and like they often there's like not a lot of action that'll happen because there's fear on making the wrong choice. Like the terms can feel like they're a different language. That's another place where I come and interrupt and it's like, well, what is the next step? When are you going to do it? Will you let me know that you did it? Like that kind of like very tactical, just let's break this down into manageable steps and keep going. That's another place where I support clients.
yeah. For the listeners, how can they get to know you better, and how do you work? How can they work with you? How can they find out more about you?
Yeah, well, a great place to learn more about me is really the podcast that I've made. The first episode of the podcast, Highly Sensitive Money, is me sharing my money story, which you've heard a little bit of today. The way that I work with people, I take 5 coaching clients one at a time. So it's a pretty, right now I have like a waiting list for a month, 6 weeks, which for most people, it's like, okay, I mean, I've been doing this with money. I can wait another 2 months to work with you and change it. It often gives people like some breathing room to go and look at their things, like to do some of the preliminary work before we start working together. Because social justice is incredibly important to me, I offer accessibility pricing. So that means I charge people 2% of gross household income. And you can find out the details of what that means on my website when you go to private coaching. But that way it's an equal percentage, but a different amount depending on what people's income levels are. And I also offer a free 30-minute introductory call because sometimes all you really need is like a 30 minutes with a heart-centered money professional. I can give you suggestions on books to read, podcasts to go to, places to get more education. I also have a self-guided budgeting course that's called La Bougette de la Lune, the budget and the moon. The word budget is a French word and it comes from like little bag, a little bougette, a little bag. And it's not a way for you to measure like your self-worth or your ability to be an adult. It's just a little bit to keep track of your IOUs and your coins, right? And I linked it to the moon because it's cyclical. Our budgets are cyclical. Our cash flow is cyclical. If you take a leave from work for caregiving responsibilities, your income, your budget's going to be very different than when you get promoted to a different place, right? Like, so understanding that where you are right now is not where you're always going to be and having the skill set to update your budget as your life changes is really helpful. And that's what that self-guided 4 week course is about.
And I love languages, and I love French as well as Spanish. So I love la bougette et la lune. I love that. Um,
Mhm.
so we'll put all of the, can they find all of those on your website?
All of that is on my website on the first page. Yes.
So we will definitely link into that. And I would really, really, really recommend going to listen to Deanna's podcast. Oh, are you on social media as well? That was the other question.
I am. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. I tend to be less active on those because I find them overstimulating, but I do post. So you can follow me there and you'll hear snippets of podcasts that I've done in the past.
Perfect. And please do, listeners, go out and just, I think gorge is a good word. Deanna's. Go and do the tree quiz as well. I'm going to be doing that after. I love the accessibility side of things. As when I heard you say that, I was like, oh, I really like that. That's so lovely because cost is a huge part of being an entrepreneur, and that's, as we've discussed before, that was something I really kind of struggled with because I always wanted to be accessible. Yeah, so I love the fact that you've got that percentage in there.
Mhm.
I'm going to go and gorge on your website. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And I think I want to make a comment on the accessibility pricing. I think when you, as an entrepreneur, when you know what your income needs are, like what do I need as an income need, and what your energy levels are, like what kind of things you can do to get that income, it's also important to have like the courses, the things that are low energy outputs that do bring in income. And those can sometimes be where you offer accessibility pricing, right? On my course, I also have accessibility pricing because it doesn't take any energy from me to offer that at a lower cost. And also to think about like sometimes I think I'm not there yet, but I can imagine in a couple of years where I might be like, okay, I can only take this many coaching clients and I need them to fill out a questionnaire for me to really know that it's going to be that it's going to be a good exchange of energy, even if the money's not there.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I have something similar, and I always do a call to start off with because, like you said, I need to know that it's a good match and that I'm going to be able to support that person. And there are a few people that I've kind of said, I don't think I'm the right one, but I can refer you to somebody who I think would be a better fit. So I love the fact that I just think that's such a lovely thing to have in the coaching space because I don't think it's always there. Because we're not necessarily the loudest voices, these lovely, beautiful pockets of coaching and how to show up in such an authentic, genuine way don't always get seen. So I'm loving as a fellow sensitive here, I'm loving the fact that I get to shine a light on what you do and really draw people's attention to different ways of coaching. So thank you so much for that. I feel very honored to be able to share that.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you so, so much. Genuinely, thank you. It's been such a wonderful, soothing conversation. Is there anything you would like to add before we kind of wrap up?
That's all that I would add. I mean, go to my website, follow me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. You can learn more about the different ways that I support people. And just I want to encourage people to dive their toe into money work, even if it feels scary.
Yay, thank you so much. Listeners, please do go. And like I said, go and check her website out, go and check her podcast out. It is, yeah, you can tell by just listening to her now that you do get so much from everything she does. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you have any takeaways or any questions, please do reach out to me either through Instagram, LinkedIn or Facebook at Kate Carter Coaching, or you can email me at kate@katecarter.co.uk. I always love to hear your feedback and the things that you have taken from the podcast. If you know of any other highly sensitive people, then please do share this so that I can reach more and support more highly sensitive people to embrace their strengths and gifts. As a thank you, I will pick a winner every month for a free 50-minute coaching session with me. Thank you so, so much.